Well, this chapter looks at what makes for a good argument, what the pitfalls of argumentation are that you need to avoid in order to make a good argument. There's a really useful flowchart diagram in this chapter that will help step you through the questions to pose of any argument that you're analysing or making to make sure that it's a good argument. Logic is the subdiscipline within philosophy that looks at how arguments should work in order to be good arguments, and therefore how they can go wrong. If you know the ways that an argument goes wrong to be a bad argument and you manage to avoid them all, then you've made a good one. So you can see that our word logic goes back to the ancient Greek word logos, which will be familiar to some readers of the New Testament from its use in the beginning of John's Gospel, where he talks about in the beginning was the logos, often translated in English Bibles as the word. But the term had a very rich meaning that's quite difficult to translate into English. So in the beginning was the logos, was the reason, the communication, the conceptual framework of reality, and yet John says that this logos, which is a term that he took from ancient Greek philosophy, has been revealed in the person of Christ to be not just a sort of abstract rational principle of reality, but to be the personal creator of reality as well. That sort of ancient Greek sense of diving into the sort of conceptual, rational framework and understanding of reality is at the root of our word logic. What is the kind of framework for our communication of concepts rationally through argumentation, and is a subdiscipline of rhetoric, which is the ancient discipline of communicating convincingly to audiences. Syllogism is just a term that means the shortest unit of argument that you can make. This is where you have two truth claims, two claims about what's real, which are called premises in an argument, which together, taken jointly, lead you to the conclusion of the argument. So there's a truth claim about how reality is, the conclusion of the argument, which is supported by, if you like, the prior truth claims, which are the premises. And the shortest argument that you can have is two premises leading to a conclusion. To give a classical kind of example of this, the argument is often given Socrates, who was another ancient Greek philosopher. Socrates is mortal. That's a truth claim, premise one. Premise two, all mortals die. Therefore, here's the conclusion, it follows from these two truth claims that, therefore, Socrates will die. If Socrates is a mortal and all mortals die, then Socrates will die. So given one thing and given another thing, it follows that this conclusion must be true. You cannot continue sort of pushing back argumentation forever and pointing at the premises of an argument and saying, well, why should I believe that? Well, sometimes you can, and it makes sense to give an argument for believing that premise. But then, of course, you've provided me with a couple of other premises that I can point to and say, but why should I believe that? Now, you can't keep on doing that ad infinitum because you could never fulfill that demand. So ultimately, our beliefs must track back to some basic beliefs, things that we believe, but not on the basis of other things. It's impossible for everything that we believe to be believed on the basis of further things, because that's an infinite regress. So we have to start from somewhere when we argue, start from premises that we argue from, but without arguing to, if you like. Now, philosophers will introduce another distinction here. Philosophers love distinctions because it keeps everything neat and tidy. If we can have these basic beliefs, things that we believe without basing them on other beliefs, it still surely makes sense to think that just because a belief is a basic one, doesn't mean that it's rational to hold. I can't just pick any truth claim at random out of the air and say, well, this is just something I believe that I'm going to use to argue from without arguing for, and that's sane and sensible, because you could pick anything, couldn't you, however ludicrous. So it would seem that there are some basic beliefs that it is not rational to just start arguing from at the basis of our system of arguing for things. And yet there must be some basic beliefs that are rational to start arguing from, because if there weren't, then we literally couldn't rationally argue for anything. So how do we tell the difference between what we can now call properly basic beliefs that it's rational to hold without an argument, and basic beliefs that are not properly basic? Well, there are a couple of things that can be said here. One is that there are certain beliefs that it is just self-contradictory to doubt. So, for example, the belief that the basic laws of logic are true. Those beliefs are not beliefs that it's even possible to argue for, because in order to argue that the laws of logic are true and reliable, you'd have to assume and rely upon the reliability of the laws of logic, which is arguing in a circle and begging the question. But nonetheless, we just know, we just see, we intuit, if you like, that the basic laws of logic are true and reliable and must be relied upon in any arguing that we do for anything. So there are some things that we just can't get by without, that you can't deny rationally. But there would seem to be other properly basic beliefs that are rational to hold without an argument, but that are not self-contradictory to doubt. And these are often things like perceptual beliefs, like the beliefs, it looks like there's a hand in front of me. Now, I just look, it seems to me that there's a hand there, and I form the belief there's a hand. I don't go through some little syllogistic argument in my head, working up to the conclusion, therefore there's a hand in front of me. I just naturally form this belief. And that seems to be actually quite rational to do that. Because of what, for example, the Oxford philosopher Richard Swinburne calls the principle of credulity, that is, the principle of when to trust things, to take things on trust rationally. It says, if things seem to you to be a certain way, then it's reasonable to believe that they are that way until you've got a good enough reason for doubt. Rather, you don't start off by saying, I'm going to doubt everything, and you would be distrustful and doubting of that reason until you had reason, and you distrust that and then you'd never believe anything. Philosophers will often talk about issues to do with the burden of proof. Who should shoulder the burden of giving a reason for believing something? Who can say, well, actually, the burden's on you to show that that's not a reasonable starting place for my argument? Who should be innocent until proven guilty, as it were, in terms of which beliefs we start with? So that's another way of thinking about sorting out this issue between properly and non-properly basic beliefs.